Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Paranormal Karen, funny too. Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Oh, and did I mention she's funny too? Yeah, cha-cha-cha.
Cha-cha-cha! How about that, folks? My sister says my theme song is an earworm, I guess, which means that it sticks in her ear. She says, I don't like it, but then I think maybe I do like it because it's always stuck in my ear. So there, cha-cha-cha, everyone. That's how I'm going to open every podcast. Today we are talking about the Djinn, D-J-I-N-N, not a gin and tonic, the Djinn, which is a Middle Eastern spirit. It's where we get our image of the genie in the bottle. Very interesting topic. And a couple of things to get to before I get there. Welcome, new listeners from the Tinfoil Hat podcast. Thank you for coming on over. I had so much fun on that podcast with Sam Tripoli, and a lot of you came over. Thanks for listening. We got a lot of exciting shows coming up. Also, I did a investigation with my team, CalPara, that's California Paranormal, with my friend Mona from that. We got a call. KD sent us out on an investigation. We got a call from Bailey, who is a YouTube star. She does makeup videos, and she was thinking there was something in her house. So Mona and I went out and did an investigation, had a blast. She was lovely. I am not going to say too much until her video comes out, because we went to her house and investigated for the day. And let me just say, old Los Angeles, holy cow, just, entertainers have big energy, big things happen here. Old town Los Angeles, a little crazy. I'll tell you about that after her video comes out. She was just fantastic. That was super fun. I am getting, for my interviews, I know the sound quality hasn't been terrible, but I finally found the new way I want to record interviews when I'm getting ready to interview someone over in Australia. Finally found the right equipment. It's on the way, trying to get the echo out of my apartment. Got some tapestries up. Also buying some curtains, which I'm amazed that I need curtains with how much dog hair is in this apartment. You would think the amount of dog hair would be the same as a carpet or a curtain or anything to cut the sound like material. I might as well just weave that into a big blanket and the sound will be better here. Also, thanks to everybody that came out to Psychic Stand-Up at Flappers. Our next show is September 13th. Hope to see you there. It was a blast. I'm going to be doing some of these episodes alone. At first, I thought it was going to be all guests and stuff. And then here's what I found out. I am very self-centered, so I enjoy doing these alone. I had so much fun with the ghost ships and the missing Malaysian Flight 370 that I'm going to do some more. I like doing the research. They take much longer, so there's always going to be guests in between there. But the one I started was on the dark web. I just started that last week, and holy cow, people, where I thought that podcast was going, it took me in a completely different avenue, and I was like, this is going to take forever. I'm going to jump into something else that I think I can whip up a little faster, which is why I got on the Djinn, I thought. But the one about the dark web, I'm very excited. Holy cow, it got crazy. Also, September 7th through 9th, I will be working at the Tahoe Biltmore Para Retreat. Ladies and gentlemen, just a few tickets left. It's going to be Dave Schrader, John Zaffis. It's just going to be the top people in the paranormal field. The first time they've had investigations at the Biltmore in Tahoe, which all you got to say is Tahoe, and I'm in. That is a beautiful place. Come on out there. We'll have, we're at a very high altitude. There won't be a lot of oxygen, which will make it even more fun. Go to Laughing Devil, but it's Devel, LAUGHING, Northern Nevada Ghost Hunters. They're coming up doing a podcast with me. And you'll hear on the podcast, it sounds like I'm not going to be there. Since the time that we taped that podcast, they had a fallout, and they called me and said, "Do you want to be on?" And I was like, "Yeah." Just given time to hang out with Dave Schrader is good enough for me. So before we get started talking about Djinn, I have a friend that's kind of told me, she said, sometimes I go over topics, like I say, "Oh, is that Santeria, or is that a walk-in," or something like that. And she's like, "Maybe you could go back and explain those." So that's kind of where I started with today. And I talked to, you heard Tommy Demonologist, I think he was on last week. I called him and got some definitions for you, just so you know going in. I like my podcast to be scary, but I don't like you to leave scared. I want you to be like, that was a really interesting, creepy podcast, and now I'm not afraid to leave the house. So I wanted to start with the difference between possession, a walk-in, and an attachment, because those are terms you may hear me use, and hopefully my brain will let me refresh you on them every time we use them. So possession is when a demon inhabits a human body. Now, real full possession is actually pretty rare, and there's a process to it. The next time I have Tommy on, this is where we're going to start with possession. It is sometimes we can narrow it down to a 3-step process. There's a little more to it. Yes, you've all seen The Exorcist, that sort of along lines that goes. But possession can be short-lived. There's a thing called a partial possession, when a person still has control a majority about of the time, as opposed to when the entity has complete control. Okay? This can take years to free somebody from possession. So that's really that's the top. That's something we're probably all not going to have to worry about. And hopefully we won't see that. I have no interest in seeing that. Second down the line is called a walk-in. Many of you have heard me talk about walk-ins on ghost hunts, where a spirit of usually a human, I always assume it's a human when you're on a ghost hunt, steps into or walks into another person's body and occupies it for, usually on a ghost hunt, it's a short amount of time. It's still very creepy. I have seen it where someone didn't know they were having it and they blacked out. I've heard about that many times. And then I've seen it where there was sort of 2 conversations coming out of the same person. It usually is short-lived because that's a lot of energy for a spirit to hold that. But talking to Tommy said there can also be walk-ins that are very transient or long-term. And so that can go on for a while. Some people believe that you can have a walk-in and literally the body trades spirits. Okay, I've talked to Sonia about animals, where one soul leaves the body and the other one comes in permanently, which I see that as just another argument against marriage. I can find an argument against marriage in any topic I hit, but this one, a lot of you people that are divorced are probably nodding, yes, I went to bed with one person and woke up with another. So there, I found a way to bring this back to marriage. So that is a walk-in. Now, an attachment can be anything. That can be human, it can be energetic, it could be different dimensional beings. It can be demons. It is when something attaches to your energy. I have worked in Reiki to release attachments from people, and I have had attachments say to me, this person's just going to invite me back in. Soon, I can go, I can do what you want, but this person's going to have me back, and there's a reason for that. There are attachments where people actually communicate with them. They feel like there is a voice with them or something with them, or they sense something, and they start to feel special. Even though this thing is pulling energy and may be negative, it can be very tricky. So this is a big topic that I got to cover on a whole podcast. Sometimes the person is not aware. Sometimes they are. They can be ancestral. They can be lineage. They can be passed down. I know someone that sort of suddenly felt influenced by something like this after her brother had passed away. And her brother had had an awful time, was in and out of jail, couldn't get his energy right. Sort of, sometimes people perceive this as bad luck. If you haven't heard my episode on protection with Tommy, You'll want to listen to it. If any of this is speaking to you, or you're going, I kind of know somebody like that, that's why we all are in charge of our own energy, our own aura. We got to keep that positive. We got to keep that clean however we do. So now let's get into the topic of Djinn, the genie in the bottle. Okay. Now, Djinn, I kind of wanted to look at this from two ways. I immediately went to an Islamic site because this is mostly, or used to mostly be, a topic that took place in the Middle East. And I was looking for a good definition. How do I do this? Because it's kind of like, is it a demon? Is it how does this fit in that our brains can put it in a category and understand it? Believe it or not, the best definition I found in the dictionary. Who would have thought? I was looking on all these websites and everything, and then I hit the dictionary and I was like, there it is, very simple. It is a classification of spirit lower than an angel, capable of appearing in human or animal form and influencing humankind for good or evil. Okay, that's where Djinn get tricky. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're evil, but they're a little bit of a shapeshifter. I'm going to talk about that in a second. So I started on this Islamic site, and I really liked it because they had a lot of quotes from the Quran. So kind of like if you wanted, you'd go to a Catholic priest or a Catholic religion to talk about demons, this was a great place to start. In the Quran, they are described as beings of free will living on earth parallel to mankind. So they're here with us in this third dimension. Now, when we talk about aliens, people, that's kind of an argument that comes up. Are they in this dimension? Are they already here? Are they among us? So we live in this third dimension. And it always reminds me, they used to have this as seen on TV ad for these sunglasses called blue blockers. And they would put them on people in the street, and people would say, oh, they're so great. I've never had sunglasses this good. And I'll never forget this one dude said, wow, it looks like everything's in 3D. And I was like, yeah, because you're in the third dimension, sir. So everything should seem 3D, whether the glasses are on or off. You're in the third dimension, so everything should be three-dimensional. The word jinn, the Arabic word, it comes from the verb jana, Janna, which means to conceal or hide. So they can be invisible, or they can sort of be in this dimension among us, but we don't see them. The Quran says, indeed we, I'm not sure why they said we, I believe that's universal God. Indeed we created man from dried clay of black smooth mud, and we created the jinn from smokeless fire. Smokeless fire is kind of their thing. That's where we talk about the desert. They're very fiery energy. They're very hot. Smokeless fire. That would be great in a casino when people smoke, if there was smokeless cigarettes. Maybe the jinn can help us with that. Jinn were created before man, much like demons and angels. That's why these things have an advantage on us. They have wisdom. They live much longer. They are like humans. This is again from the Quran, where they are supposed to worship God and follow Islamic rule. A quote from the Quran again, their purpose in life is exactly like ours. I did not create the jinn and mankind except to worship me. So there's a double negative there in, maybe that's how they, in the Quran, double negative. I did not create the jinn and mankind except to worship me. So the jinn are supposed to be like us in that they are supposed to be bettering themselves and worshiping God. This is an interesting tidbit because I have heard exorcisms or people removing things from house talking about when it's something like this, like a jinn, it does not recognize Jesus. So you have to really go with God to get rid of this thing or move it on or communicate. Jesus holds no power over these. Now, I know a lot of people might get antsy on that. It's okay. Send the email. I'd love to read it, hear what you have to say about it. But that has been what I have heard and a lot of experienced people say. The above statement also shows that they, sorry, I'm looking at my own notes. I do this all the time. I figure by this time you're used to me stumbling around, because that's how I talk. My podcast producer is like, don't apologize, just keep going. They're listening to you. Let it go. Even though they have a longer lifespan than us, they are very much like us. They eat, they drink, they complain about traffic, they might bake tofu, they fall in love, they get married. They are very much like us. They will be present on Judgment Day to go to paradise or hell. So they are supposed to be standing with us on the Judgment Day reunion, which means I'm going to be doing a lot of looking around that day. I need to see everyone, including the Djinn. So that could be very confusing. And a lot of times I get distracted. So I hope when I'm being told where I'm supposed to go, whether it's heaven or hell, I'm not looking at something else and my mind drifts. That's people know when they give me directions anywhere, you have to hold my attention. So I hope on Judgment Day I don't drift while I'm gazing at a Djinn. Their abilities that distinguish them from mankind. Number one, they can take any physical form. They are known as shapeshifters. I have a friend that I'm going to have on the podcast that had a girlfriend that he talks about her as a shapeshifter. The abilities God gave them, this was supposedly the test of the Djinn, which is, are you going to use your abilities for good or evil? Okay, that's what I say for lawyers. Are you using your abilities for good or evil? Same thing with the Djinn. So they can shapeshift. They have the ability to take over the mind or body of other creatures, not just human beings. Very interesting, at this part in the article, they showed something about, they said this is where they believe they are an evil part, where they are getting people to worship other gods. They made a reference to the Hindu religion, where there was all of a sudden this thing where the Hindu idols and statues started drinking milk. And I was like, well, that has to be a metaphor or something. But no, go to YouTube and punch in Hindu statues drinking milk, and there's a ton of them. This is not long ago. This is not like a Bible story. There's video after video after video, and they're very odd because they have people holding little spoonfuls of milk up to statues, and then the milk disappears. I had never heard of this before, so I found this very interesting. Like they said, they say that's the Djinn shape-shifting to mislead people. But I want to know who's the first person that actually held a teaspoon of milk up to a statue to see if it would drink it. But there's your videos. Go take a look. They're very interesting. And on the same day that I'm watching these videos, I get an email. If you haven't signed up and you're really into the paranormal, every day I get an email called Phantoms and Monsters. And this dude that puts together this email is on it. You get it every day. It's got a UFO story, a Bigfoot story, a ghost story, a Mothman story, and it's excellent. It's excellent. And I get a Phantoms and Monsters email that day that announces trees are bleeding. There's blood coming out of trees. And I thought, well, that fits exactly with the Hindu drinking milk. This would be in the Islamic religion. Somebody would say, that's them being malicious. That's them trying to get you to worship other gods. So that would be the Djinn working their abilities in the wrong sense. Now, they do fall in love. So they might shapeshift into something that would appeal to the person they want to fall in love with them. But usually it's a revengeful thing, and most of them are working for malicious intent. So Judgment Day, we'll see what happens then. Also, another ability of the Djinn, triple lunts. A lot of people are afraid to talk about the figure skating ability of the Djinn. I am not. Triple lunts, very good. People are always asking me, Karen, you are so knowledgeable about tarot, ghosts, and otherworldly spirits. How do you stay so organized and grounded here on Earth? And I have to tell them my secret weapon. It's black tourmaline. And Nita over at NitaApple.com. After years of complaining about all the text messages and emails back and forth, trying to schedule tarot readings and chasing after payments, Nita installed Acuity Scheduler on my website, and now I just get a little ding on my phone, and that tells me someone has made an appointment and the money is already in my account. I love that little ding, except every time it goes off, Courage runs to his food bowl. 5 minutes with Nita can save you 5 hours of bumbling around and trying to do things yourself. So if you spend 10 minutes with her, that'll save you like 72 hours or something like that. I don't know. I'm not good with math, but you know who is? Nita. That's who I would ask. Want to end all the emails back and forth and get paid up front when clients schedule time with you? Then hop on over to nitaapple.com/services and let Nita get you set up with a simple system that will make your life so much easier. Use coupon code BOO4U and get 20% off any products or services. She's got a lot of services and products that can save you time and money. That's BOO4U, all lowercase, BOO, the number 4, the letter U, and get 20% off. That's Nita Apple at nitaapple.com/services. nitaapple.com/services, and make your life easier today. So now we get into the part where a lot of people say Djinn were mentioned in the Bible, the story of the Djinn and King Solomon. And I think you can look up your own arguments about that online, but we're sort of leaning Christian now. And King Solomon his father was David from David and Goliath fame. You might have heard that story before. And Solomon was his son. He was known as the wisest. David was instructed by God to give Solomon the throne before he passed away, which also meant Solomon got it before his brothers, which caused some problems, even though Solomon wasn't the firstborn. But that's not the story we're looking at today. So Solomon was known for his wisdom. You remember the story about the baby, and the two women were fighting over whose baby it was. And so he said, well, let's cut the baby in half. So the real mother came forward. So that's a familiar story to everyone. That's who we're talking about. He built the first Jewish temple in 957, which is very hard to say. 957, that was a year. Oh my God, can you imagine when that went to 1,000 and they all had to change the numbers on their checks? Goodness, probably filling out 999 forever. Oops, I forgot, we moved. 957 was the year. Solomon had 700 wives. So they say his weakness was women. I would say so. And 300 mistresses. You know, you think you would have enough with the 700 wives. There's 52 weeks in a year. So 365 days. That's 2 years of asking people to marry you. That's a lot of, I think there was a lot of wine going around. But anyways, but Solomon, that's very blasphemous, isn't it? Sorry, Solomon. He commanded both men and jinn, okay? As he was building the temple, Asaph, I'm going to say it like that, Asaph, Asaph was one of his, this other word, Vizir. He was a vizier. I don't know what that is. Asaph was a vizier. Came and said people or something was stealing his jewels from his room, as well as others. Other people were having their jewels stolen. So Solomon asked God to send him an evil spirit to deal with the thief. That's interesting. Can you send me an evil spirit to deal with this thief? And Archangel Michael showed up, and he put a small golden ring with an inset and a sealed engraved stone on his finger that was supposed to be all powerful. Okay? It was all powerful over everything but death. And he could wear this stone and even command demons. So male, female, any kind. Likely, they always started a rumor, as a tarot reader, I know people always think pentacles are devil worship, or people get very upset about pentacles. And some people thought the pentacle was the engravement on Solomon's ring, but it wasn't, because the pentacle was was around long before that. So we're not really sure, although I think that's good that we all don't have the seal. Perhaps it's better that we don't all have that power. He wore it on his middle finger, which I don't know if that's where we got the finger from. But anyways, by the power of the seal of the one God, I command thee, troublesome spirit, to come forth. That's what he said. They say, out of flames, a demon appeared holding jewels. All of the jewels he had stolen, all of a sudden, just boom, out of the flames he appears. The demon was so surprised, he dropped everything. He could not believe that he was standing in front of a mortal man that had greater power than he did. The huge demon saw the seal of the ring and got so scared he shrieked. And they talk about he killed birds and some of the animals. The shriek was so bad, a lot of animals died there. And Solomon asked the demon why he had stolen all the gems, or why he continued to steal the gems. And the spirit said he had an insatiable hunger. He was eating the gems. And this showed itself as a vampire spirit at that time. That he just couldn't get filled. He was drinking all these gems. And Solomon asked him why he did that, why he needed so many gems. And the demon didn't say anything. So the demon said, Solomon, you can look in my heart and know the answer. And Solomon looked in his heart, and they used the phrase, opened the 49 gates of wisdom, and took pity on the demon. Because they say the eating of gems were created in the dawn of the earth from the ancient forest. This was, they say, before the dawn of the earth. This is when demons and angels roamed the earth, and what happened was they, apparently misbehaving or something, they all got cast out. Okay, it's like taking my ball and go home. Everybody's out. And the next day when the sun came up, it crystallized the green life and the forest into gems. So that's why they were still, as that's what nourishes the demon. So Solomon actually took pity on this demon. And at this point in the story, they switch and call it a Djinn. And he burned the seal into the neck as a branding of sovereignty. And from that day on, the Djinn did his bidding for him. And the Djinn always, then was given the task of cutting the stones for the temple. So it put him to work with the gems anyways. And one by one, if the Djinn caused any trouble, King Solomon would call them in and burn the seal on them, and they would do his bidding. So that's sort of where the Djinn moves into the Bible stories. So here are some types of Djinn. You may have neighbors that are Djinn and not know it. From these descriptions, I think you might. The first is a ghoul. That's the one I came across. That's really, I guess we adapted that for Halloween. The ghoul is a shapeshifter, cannibal, blood drinker, feeds on human flesh, eats travelers' children's corpses stolen from graves. The most dangerous is the female, called the gula, most feared because she has the ability to transform herself as a mortal woman. And then she often marries men. I know a lot of men are probably shaking their heads thinking this happened to them. But she can get a man to marry her and then kind of turn and probably, I guess, eat his flesh. So they appear as a mortal woman. They are nocturnal. You can find them in graveyards. They have before they shapeshift, I might put, they have the legs of a donkey and the horns of a goat. Because after that, you really would not mistaken them for a woman. So that is before the shapeshift. Then we have a type called a hin, H-I-N-N. That is closest to animals. They look like animals. They shapeshift into animals. Usually they look like dogs. Then we have something called the Afrit, A-F-R-I-T. No, I-F-R-I-T. This is male or female, lives underground. It's a winged creature, and weapons don't work on it, but it's very susceptible to magic. They will generally marry one another, but they can marry humans. They can be captured or enslaved. They are said to be good or evil, but usually they are evil. Then we have the Jann, J-A-N-N. That is a shapeshifter that lives in the desert. They come up in the form of whirlwinds or camels. They are enemies to the ghouls, so you kind of got a little gang war going on there. They also are said to be responsible if someone is stuck in the desert and they see an oasis that isn't there. That is said to be part of the Jann. They protect armies, and they protect armies that they feel are righteous. Okay. Also, we have the, I'm going to say this wrong, Marid. This is the most powerful genie. This one has the loud voice. This one is the, it can have half a head. It is said to hop around on one leg. It is the offspring of a different type of jinn and a human. So another jinn mated with a human, and we got these. They are said to be very dangerous. If they touch you, you can become fleshless. That was very hard to say. I'm going to try it again because fleshless threw me off. If they touch you, you can become fleshless in seconds. No one wants to be fleshless. I'll tell you that. Then the other one is called hang on here. I can't even read my own writing. A Palis, Palis. This is a vampire footlicker. Yeah, that's what I said, vampire footlicker, that lives in the desert. It's low intelligence, so it can be outwitted very easily. It attacks at night and it sucks the blood out of the human from the feet. It can be fooled by sleeping end to end with your head at someone else's feet. So apparently that's a trick they fall for. The Shaitan, Shaitan. This one is a hermaphrodite. It is mostly, it lacks free will. It cannot choose between good and evil like some of these can. It just falls into the category of evil and malicious, and it is known as a demon. And the last one is spelled Shiqqq, double Q. Wow, that. Remember that for your next Scrabble game. Shiqqq, only half formed, looks monstrous in appearance, can shapeshift into humans easily. There you go. There's just a couple of jinn for you. Okay, everybody, I hope it's not too breezy. I had to turn on a fan because everybody in LA knows the planet is hurtling towards the sun, and it's so hot. So I want to bring up the name Rosemary Ellen Guiley. I have already reached out to her. Folks, if you want to know about the Djinn, she is fantastic. I'm hoping to get her on the podcast. She puts out a free PDF called the Encyclopedia of Ghosts and Spirits, if you are interested in that. She talks about the Djinn and she relates them to everything. In other words, everything kind of that falls between angels and demons, she has somehow connected to the jinn. She thinks that they are a much bigger than we're thinking. She talks about how in the Middle East, they say if you have a snake in your house, not to kill the snake, that you ask the snake to leave, or you try to remove the snake 3 times. Because if you kill the snake and it turns out it's a jinn, which is their favorite form, you will have a whole family of jinn after you. So you're supposed to ask if the snake does not leave 3 times, then you can kill the snake. She does a great job of showing the connections between the Greys, between things like the Mothman, between UFO stuff, and she explains that being shapeshifters, they like to take on an appearance that is very unsettling to us. It might be 2 things together. In Wisconsin, there's often people see something called the dog man, which is a dog head sort of on a human torso that walks upright. That would be a shapeshifter or something that a jinn would do to take 2 or 3 different parts to confuse or to, be unsettling to see. She does this was what made me want to talk to her. She has a very interesting connection by kids that are afraid of something in the bedroom or shadow people that are often seen. She connects these to the jinn. So I'm going to get her to try and get on the podcast, and I'm sure she will scare us even further. But I'm just going to read you some stories I actually found on BuzzFeed that are just very short. I read some longer stories about the jinn online that I was going to read to you, and you know what, they were too much, and they were about deaths and things like that, and I thought, these are short and sweet. You get the idea. They'll scare you enough, and then we'll wrap up this podcast, and hopefully Los Angeles will cool down a little bit. Okay, this one is called The Fight. One time my mother-in-law was sitting in bed. She looked over and saw a woman sitting in a chair next to her with a long pointy finger in her face with very sharp angles. She was so frustrated and annoyed with the jinn They see them a lot in their houses and are no longer afraid, just really annoyed by them, that she reached out and grabbed the Djinn by the wrist and yelled, "Get out! I'm tired of you, get out!" It started to try to pull its wrist away and eventually tried to bite her hand because she would not let go. She pulled her hand away before it bit, and then the Djinn vanished. Okay, that's a pretty good story. I like that one. There's an old Persian story. One day a lady goes to the public bathhouse. She pays an attendant and goes inside. Once inside, she notices someone in the room with her. She looks down at their feet, but instead of their feet, the person has hooves. The lady freaks out and runs outside as fast as she can. She rushes to the attendant and tells her that she saw someone with hooves instead of feet. The attendant looks at her, lifts up her skirt, and asks, "Like these?" Okay, that's a good story. Some of these may be legends, and the other ones get a little too, there was one about soldiers, and it just got way too graphic and dark. Okay, this one, The Night Whisperer. A few years ago, when I was on my third trimester of pregnancy, I would only be able to fall asleep when dawn came. Just as I was to fall asleep one night, I felt pressure on the end of my bed, near my feet, as if someone very heavy sat on the bed, which was weird because I didn't even hear anyone come into the room, no creaking door, no footsteps. Just then an eerie voice spoke straight into my mind. The language was unintelligible and distorted. I knew it wasn't human, but to my surprise, I understood what it was trying to say. My brain processed it easily, as if I had learned the language somewhere in the past. It asked me to pray my morning prayers. I was too sleepy and too scared to actually open my eyes. What if its face was suddenly right in front of my nose? So I responded in my head, communicating without actually opening my mouth and saying a word. "Later, please. I'm so tired. I didn't get any sleep." After I said so, the weight on the end of my bed lifted. The air, which was previously heavy with presence, became light and clear. I opened my eyes a little and saw the earliest morning gleam of light through my window. My door stood still. No one came in or out. I fell back asleep. Okay. This one, okay, here's one I like. This one's a territorial Djinn. This is a story that sort of talks about how in the Middle East, the Djinn have areas that they occupy. And most of the people in the tribes in the area know that it's their territory. They don't mess with them. It seems like a good contract. My uncle went to visit his cousins in India. His cousins told him that since it was summertime and they would all sleep in the courtyard together. However, they told him he wasn't allowed to place his bedding in a particular corner. Apparently, a Djinn slept there, and strange things happened if anyone disturbs that corner. My uncle said it was nonsense and decided to sleep there anyways. One night he woke up on the other side of his court. He laughed at first and he thought it was his cousin who were pranking him and decided to sleep there again. The following night the same thing happened. So he left a note under his pillow saying, "Stop pranking me. I know there is no Djinn." That night he said he was pushed off his bed and his bedding was thrown on the other side. A note was thrown into his lap which said, "I sleep here." The scary part is it wasn't that dark and there was no one there to be seen. Okay, here's a good one to close on. My uncle once told me a story about a couple. The husband used to work in the force, so he was sent on long trips outside the village. I'm taking it that force means a government out there or something like that. His wife was usually lonely, but she befriended a man. He would sit on her courtyard wall with his back facing her, so she could only see his face when he turned around and to answer back. It was a sweet friendship. One evening she asked him to come over for tea and bring his wife along with him. But instead of getting down and using the door, he took his leg and stretched it 10 feet down her wall to her side of the yard. He said, "Why didn't you offer me tea before? I'd love to come and have chai with you." Okay. That's enough. All right. No, one more. This is my favorite. Okay, this is the scariest one to me. Here it is. Wait a minute, let me find it. Okay. It's scary because, to me, any story about marriage is terrifying. Okay. The husband. My friend was staying in north of Morocco for the summer. One morning, she woke up with a big triangle of henna on her hand. She showed it to every person in her family, and they said the only valid reason was that she was married to a Djinn now. She was never lucky in love ever since. See, once you say marriage, I'm already scared. Maybe in a past life I was married to a Djinn, but that's what I say. Marriage is always trouble. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this episode about the Djinn or get a little more insight into the Djinn. And also, like I said, I'm reaching out to Rosemary Ellen Guiley, so I'm going to call this the end of part 1. Okay, a couple of stories, a little definition there. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed it, and you can go on iTunes or wherever you listen and leave me a 5-star review, that would be great. Also, if you want to book a tarot reading, karenrontowski.com or paranormal.com, all that information is there. Special thanks to Mike Flynn at Uno Rising Media, my producer. Stay tuned, everybody. We got more great podcasts coming up. And always remember, when given the choice, never choose normal. People are always asking me, Karen, you are so knowledgeable about tarot, ghosts, and otherworldly spirits. How do you stay so organized and grounded here on Earth? And I have to tell them my secret weapon. It's black tourmaline. And Nita over at nitaapple.com. After years of complaining about all the text messages and emails back and forth, trying to schedule tarot readings and chasing after payments, Nita installed Acuity Scheduler on my website, and now I just get a little ding on my phone, and that tells me someone has made an appointment and the money is already in my account. I love that little ding, except every time it goes off, Courage runs to his food bowl. 5 minutes with Nita can save you 5 hours of bumbling around and trying to do things yourself. So if you spend 10 minutes with her, that'll save you like 72 hours or something like that. I don't know, I'm not good with math, but you know who is? Nita. That's who I would ask. Want to end all the emails back and forth and get paid up front when clients schedule time with you? Then hop on over to nitaapple.com/services and let Nita get you set up with a simple system that will make your life so much easier. Use coupon code BOO4U and get 20% off any products or services. She's got a lot of services and products that can save you time and money. That's BOO4U, all lowercase, BOO, the number 4, the letter U, and get 20% off. That's Nita Apple at nitaapple.com/services. NITAAPPLE.com/services, and make your life easier today.